Hi guys, I'm glad you're here. Today in this History Day Fair tutorial, we are going to focus on research. So we're going to look at questions to ask, what is a thesis statement, how do we find sources, and how do we cite our sources, and a little bit about the annotated bibliography. So let's get started. So number one, start your research, as simple as that. So nothing in history happens in a vacuum. To understand the connections between your topic and the time period, you need to begin reading about the time period. And as you read, you need to ask yourself the following questions. Why did my topic happen at this particular time and in this particular place? What were the events or the influences that came before my topic? How was my topic influenced by, and how did it influence the economic, social, political, and cultural climate of the time period? All of these questions will help you to build a story of your topic and grasp the historical significance. This will also help you begin thinking about your thesis. All right, and that is step 2, develop a thesis statement. Now, most of you have been doing this in English for at least the past year, and you will do this quite a bit in 8th grade as well, but not just in English class. So your project should do more than just simply tell a story. Every exhibit, performance, documentary, paper, and website should make a point. To do this, you must develop your own argument of the historical impact of the person, event, pattern, or idea that you're studying. The point you make is simply called a thesis statement. Your thesis statement will explain what you believe to be the impact and significance of your topic in history. So, what types of sources do we need to use in the research process? Most of you should already be familiar with what primary sources are, but I'm going to go over it quickly anyways. Primary sources are information about a historical event or period in which the creator of the source was an actual participant in or a contemporary of a historical moment. For instance, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. So he would be considered, the Declaration of Independence would be considered a primary source. The purpose of primary sources is to capture the words, the thoughts, and the intentions of the past. Primary sources help you to interpret what happened and why it happened. Examples of primary sources include documents, artifacts, historic sites, songs, or other written and tangible items that were created, remember, during the historical period that you're studying. Secondary sources would be like your textbook. Secondary sources are usually created by historians, but based on the historian's reading of the primary sources. So if you wanted to really understand and get a grasp and a feeling of what the Declaration of Independence meant and what it said, then you'd want to read the actual document. But if you want to get an interpretation of it or more of a surrounding of it, then you'd go to a history book that would tell you about the Declaration of Independence and basically, some of the things it said. But there's nothing like going to the real thing. Secondary sources are usually written decades, if not centuries, after the event occurred by people who did not even live through or participate in the event or issue. And the purpose of a secondary source is to help build the story of your research from multiple perspectives and to give your research historical context. So now that you have your sources and you've chosen the ones you want to use, you need to make sure you cite them correctly. And again, go to your rule book. But they say you can use the MLA format to record your information. And I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that is also the format that you're used to using from English class. Now, the annotated bibliography, for some of you, may be something you've never done. And I find it fascinating, and it's really one of my favorite things to read. I want to know why you chose these sources. So an annotated bibliography is required for all categories. Okay, so every single one of my pre-AB students will give me an annotated bibliography. The annotation for each source must explain how the source was used and how it helped you understand your topic. The annotated bibliography. Okay, so list only those sources that you used. An annotation normally should be only 1 to 3 sentences long. It's not very long. First, an annotated bibliography tells me how many sources you used and the quality of the sources used in your research. It provides evidence of the many hours that you spent doing research. And lastly, it tells me how you used your sources and why they were valuable to understanding your topic, and that's really what I like to see. It basically shows me the scope and depth of your research. So here is an example. So you have your citation at the top, and then you skip a space, and then you have your annotation portion. What I would suggest is as you are researching and you find your source, that you immediately cite it correctly and immediately write out your annotation, because the last thing you want to do is come to the end of your project and go, oh no, I haven't done my annotation bibliography yet, and you go through and you're sitting here looking at your sources going, why did I pick this? It's so much better to do it in the moment. So here is an example. So this person wrote Booker, and Booker here is the author. Booker reports on the launch of a joint research program on the human and environmental health effects from spraying Agent Orange and other herbicides during the Vietnam War. The extent of Agent Orange exposure among the Vietnamese, identification of highly contaminated areas, and monitoring migration of dioxin are assessed. The author asserts the government is not doing enough to help the Vietnamese people who still suffer from Agent Orange. This is written for people with little prior knowledge of this, and it continues. That's obviously well written. That's why it's here. But I also, as a side note, my dad died of Agent Orange. He flew helicopters through that cloud, and it affected him, and he passed away a couple years ago. So that's a side note. All right, you've got this. Again, get started early. That's my best advice. Take your time, enjoy it. This is not a project to stress about. I would suggest you say, instead of I have to do it, say I get to do the History Day Fair project. All right, I'm looking so forward to seeing what you do. See you soon.